I knew something felt off the moment she brought it up. A family dinner at my parents' place, she had said, all smiles, her tone light, as if it were any other invitation. But I knew better. I knew what those nights really were, nights designed to remind me, in subtle and not-so-subtle ways, that I didn't belong. I had been through this before. The polite dismissals, the way they'd glance at me when I spoke, as if humoring a guest rather than acknowledging a family member. The way her father would steer conversations towards real success stories, always about people who inherited wealth, never about those who built it from the ground up like I did. But after years of enduring it, I had convinced myself that this time might be different. We had been married long enough. Maybe, just maybe, they had finally accepted me. So I agreed. I put on my best suit, the one she had bought me for occasions like these, and I showed up ready to be the respectable, patient husband they could no longer ignore. The estate was as intimidating as ever, towering and extravagant, the kind of house that wasn't just big, it was designed to feel unapproachable. The long driveway stretched endlessly, lined with imported trees and statues, leading up to an entrance grand enough to belong to royalty. A valet took my car, and as I stepped onto the stone path leading inside, I could already hear the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from the dining hall. Inside, nothing had changed. The same massive chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they seemed unreal. The same portraits of her ancestors lined the walls, their stern faces watching over the room, a reminder of the bloodline they were so proud of. The scent of expensive wine and aged wood filled the air, mixing with the distant sounds of a pianist playing something classical, something expensive. I spotted Vanessa instantly, standing with her mother near the grand dining table, deep in conversation. Her father, Richard, was pouring drinks for a group of men in tailored suits, laughing too loudly, as if he had just delivered some profound wisdom. Her siblings were scattered, comfortable in their element, slipping seamlessly between conversations. And then there was me. I adjusted my cuffs, took a deep breath, and walked in. Vanessa turned, her eyes lighting up as she saw me. She walked over, smiling, and for a brief moment, I thought, maybe this time will be different. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Hey, you made it." She leaned in and kissed my cheek, her perfume familiar, comforting. "Come, let's get to our seats." I followed her toward the grand dining table, relieved to finally blend into the setting. But just as I reached for a chair, she stopped, her hand gently touching my arm. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice as soft as ever. "I saved you a seat at the other table." I blinked. She gestured toward the far corner of the room, where a smaller, mismatched table sat, away from the grand setup. There, a handful of younger cousins and teenagers were seated, their table set with plastic cups and smaller plates, as if it were a designated spot for the unimportant. For the children. I waited for her to correct herself, to laugh and say it was a joke. But she just smiled, as if this was nothing, as if this was normal. I glanced back at the main table. No one had even noticed. Or maybe they had, and they just didn't care. Conversations continued, drinks were poured, laughter filled the air. The whole room moved on, completely unbothered by the fact that the man who married into their family was being seated like an afterthought. I looked back at Vanessa, searching for an explanation. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice low. She didn't even flinch. "It's just for tonight," she whispered quickly. There wasn't enough space at the main table, and we didn't want to rearrange everything last minute. I stared at her, my mind racing. After all these years, all the dinners, all the times I swallowed my pride and played the role of the respectful son-in-law, and this was where they still placed me? She reached for my arm again. "It's not a big deal, Daniel. It's just a seat." No, it wasn't just a seat. It was a message. It was a reminder that no matter how long I had been in this family, no matter how much I had given, no matter how much I had tried, I would never truly be one of them. And for the first time, I felt it. Not just anger, not just frustration, but something deeper. A cold, final understanding. I wasn't wanted here. Not really. Not as an equal. I let out a slow breath. My fingers tightened at my sides, then relaxed. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to change her mind. I simply stepped back, took a final look at the grand dining table, the chandeliers, the laughing faces of people who saw me as less, and I made my decision. Without a word, I placed my napkin down, turned on my heel, and walked straight toward the exit. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. I walked with the same composure, the same calm that they had always expected from me. Only this time, I wasn't playing along with their script. No one noticed. Not at first. Vanessa barely glanced up, assuming, like always, that I'd accept it, that I'd sit where I was told, that I'd stay quiet. But I didn't. I reached the door, pushed it open, and stepped outside into the cold night air. The wind bit against my skin, sharp and unforgiving. But it felt good. It felt real. I took a slow breath, watching the mist of it disappear into the night. And then, for the first time in years, I let go of the weight I had been carrying for so long. I wasn't their outsider anymore. I wasn't their problem. I was done. The night air was sharp, cutting through my suit as I stood outside that towering estate, my breath steady but my mind anything but. My hands clenched at my sides, the weight of years of humiliation pressing down on my chest, but I forced myself to breathe, to think. I wasn't just walking away from a dinner. I was walking away from the role they had assigned me. The quiet, tolerated husband. The outsider. The one who was supposed to nod and smile and accept every subtle jab, every whispered dismissal, every reminder that no matter how much I loved Vanessa, I would never be good enough for her family. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't going to take it. I could still hear the muffled voices from inside, the clinking of expensive glassware, the laughter of people who had no idea that something had just shifted, that I had just made a decision I couldn't take back. I should have left. I should have walked to my car, driven home, and let them deal with their own arrogance. But something held me there. Some deep, burning need for closure, for an answer. So, instead of leaving, I turned back around and stepped inside. The warmth of the house hit me instantly, but it felt suffocating now. Too bright, too polished, too full of people who saw me as nothing more than Vanessa's poor, self-made husband. The man who had somehow tricked his way into their prestigious family. I walked back toward the dining hall, my steps measured, my face carefully blank. Inside, the dinner was in full swing. Plates being passed, wine poured, conversations flowing as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been there to begin with. Vanessa was laughing at something her brother had said, her posture relaxed, at ease. Not a single trace of concern on her face. I stopped just before the doorway, watching her. She hadn't even looked for me, hadn't even noticed I had walked out. The realization hit harder than I expected, a sharp, ugly thing twisting in my chest. I had spent years trying to fit into her world, trying to earn a place at her family's table, and yet, when I finally walked away, when I left without a word, she didn't even blink. I took another step forward, past the threshold of the room, and finally, someone noticed. Ah, Daniel, there you are. Her father, Richard, always the first to acknowledge me when it was convenient. He raised his glass in my direction, his tone overly friendly, almost patronizing. We were wondering where you disappeared to. I met his gaze evenly, but I didn't answer. Vanessa turned then, finally registering my presence. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked her surprise with a smile. You're back, she said smoothly, as if I had just stepped away for a phone call. I ignored her and looked at the table. Every chair was filled, every seat taken, except one, at the corner. At the small, rickety side table where the children sat, their plates already half empty, the conversation light and unimportant. That was where I was supposed to sit. That was where they had placed me. Slowly, I turned back to Vanessa. You really expected me to sit there? The table was silent now, all eyes on me. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Daniel. No. I cut her off, my voice calm but firm. I want to hear it from you. You really thought it was acceptable to seat me, your husband, at the kids' table? A few people exchanged awkward glances, but no one spoke. Vanessa let out a small, nervous laugh, as if trying to downplay the moment. It's just a table, Daniel. It wasn't meant to be a big deal. I let her words hang between us for a moment. Then I turned to Richard. And you? I asked. What do you think? Richard raised a brow, clearly unimpressed with the fact that I was calling him out in front of his guests. I think you're overreacting, son. Son. He only ever called me that when he was trying to put me in my place. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course you do. I turned to Vanessa's mother next. Margaret. She cleared her throat, adjusting the napkin on her lap. Daniel, this is a family dinner. There's no need to make a scene. I took a slow breath, then nodded. right? A family dinner. And yet, despite being married to your daughter for years, I was still treated as an afterthought. Vanessa's brother, Eric, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Come on, dude. It's not that deep. It's just seating arrangements. I met his gaze. Would you have been fine sitting there? Eric scoffed. Of course not. But, then don't tell me it's not a big deal. Silence. I turned back to Vanessa, the last thread of patience unraveling inside me. Tell me something, I said, my voice quieter now, but sharper. If I had asked them to seat you there instead, would you have accepted it? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. You wouldn't, I said before she could speak. Because you know what it means. You know what it implies. Vanessa's expression wavered, and for the first time that night, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, not remorse, but realization. She had never thought about it that way, because she had never needed to, because she had never been on the receiving end of it. I let out a slow breath and stepped back. Enjoy your dinner, I said simply. Then I turned and walked away. For the second time that night, I left without waiting for a response. But this time, I knew they were watching. I knew, the moment I stepped outside, that the mood in that dining room had shifted. That for the first time, they were forced to acknowledge what they had done. And as I walked toward my car, hands steady, mind clear, I knew one more thing. I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. The night was colder than before. The air had a crisp bite to it, seeping through my suit as I walked down the grand stone steps leading away from Vanessa's family estate. My breaths were slow, measured, misting in the winter air, but inside, I burned. Not with rage, not even with sadness, just a deep, cutting certainty. I was done. I didn't slam the door behind me when I left. I didn't yell. I didn't create a spectacle. I had done exactly what they expected of me for years. Kept my composure, stayed polite, never caused a scene. Except, this time, I wasn't doing it for their comfort. This time, I was doing it for myself. The estate's long driveway stretched out before me, winding down toward the gates where my car was parked. My footsteps echoed against the pavement, the only sound in the stillness of the night. The further I walked, the lighter I felt, like I had been carrying something heavy on my shoulders for years, and I had finally decided to set it down. Behind me, the house remained lively, filled with warm lights, laughter, and the clinking of expensive silverware. For all their talk of family, for all their pretense of togetherness, they hadn't even noticed I was gone. Or maybe they had, and just didn't care. I reached my car, pressing the key fob to unlock it. The interior light flickered on, casting a dim glow against the darkness. I stood there for a moment, one hand resting on the cold metal of the door handle. I could leave, drive away, go home, but something in me resisted. It wasn't just about tonight. It wasn't just about the humiliation of being told, in the most deliberate and degrading way, that I wasn't an equal in my own marriage. It was about the years leading up to this moment. The comments, the dismissals, the way Richard would talk about real success in front of me, making it clear that my self-made business would never compare to his family's wealth. The way Margaret always looked relieved when I didn't say much during dinners, as if my silence was a favor to her social standing. The way Vanessa, my own wife, laughed along with their casual condescension, never once standing up for me. For years, I had convinced myself that love was enough, that marriage meant patience, endurance, understanding, that eventually they would accept me. But tonight, I had finally understood the truth. They never would. And worse, Vanessa never wanted them to. I exhaled slowly, the realization settling deeper. She hadn't fought for me. She hadn't argued when they seated me like an outsider at my own family dinner. She hadn't even tried to fix it. Instead, she had smiled at me and expected me to go along with it. That's what hurt the most. Not Richard's arrogance, not Margaret's silent judgment, not Eric's dismissiveness. Her. The fact that she was so comfortable with the way they treated me, that she had grown up in that world and saw nothing wrong with it. The front door of the estate opened suddenly, spilling light onto the stone steps. I didn't turn, but I heard the familiar click of heels, quick, hesitant steps. Vanessa. I braced myself as she approached. Daniel. I didn't respond. She hesitated behind me, as if trying to gauge my mood. Why did you leave? The question was so absurd, I almost laughed. Instead, I turned to face her, keeping my expression unreadable. You really have to ask? She crossed her arms, shifting on her heels. It was just a misunderstanding. I let out a slow, humorless breath, shaking my head. A misunderstanding? Yes, she said, stepping closer, her voice softer now. You're making it bigger than it is. I stared at her, waiting for an apology, for any sign that she understood what she had done. But it didn't come. Instead, she let out a small sigh, her expression frustrated, as if I was the problem. Look, I didn't think it was that serious. It was just a seating arrangement. You could have sat down and joined us after. No one would have cared. That's the problem. I interrupted, my voice steady but firm. No one would have cared. She blinked, caught off guard. I took a step forward. You don't get it, do you? You don't see how that was a message. How it wasn't just about a seat. It was about respect. About my place in this family. About the fact that after all these years, your parents still see me as beneath them. And you let them. She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. You let them. I repeated, my tone sharper now. You didn't argue. You didn't defend me. You didn't even look surprised when they treated me like I didn't belong. And you expect me to just sit there and take it? Vanessa's face faltered for the first time. Daniel, she said quietly, her voice different now, uncertain. But I wasn't done. You know, I spent years trying to earn their respect, trying to prove that I deserved to be part of this family. But tonight, I realized something. She swallowed. What? I held her gaze. I don't need their respect. I don't need their approval. I don't even need to be part of this family. Silence. The words hit her harder than anything I had said before. For the first time, she looked afraid. Are you saying you don't want to be with me anymore? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted her to feel what it was like to be the one left in uncertainty. I'm saying, I finally said, that I won't stay in a marriage where I'm treated like an afterthought, where I have to fight for basic respect, where my own wife doesn't stand up for me. She reached for my hand, but I took a step back. Daniel, please, just come inside. We can talk about this later. I shook my head. No, now is when we talk about it. Because for the first time, you're realizing what it feels like to be the one standing outside, not knowing where you belong. She flinched. Good. Because that was exactly how I had felt for years. I turned away from her and opened my car door. Where are you going? She asked, her voice desperate now. I looked back at her one last time. Home. And then, without another word, I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away, leaving her standing there, alone. The hum of the engine was the only sound in the car as I drove away from the estate, my hands firm on the steering wheel, my mind racing. I had walked away. Not just from a dinner, not just from another night of their condescension, but from the entire charade. And yet, the moment I crossed the iron gates and pulled onto the empty road, a strange silence settled in my chest. Was this it? Was this the beginning of the end? For years, I had bent over backward trying to fit into Vanessa's world. I had tolerated their insults, their dismissals, their thinly veiled contempt, all for her. But tonight had been different. It wasn't just them treating me like I didn't belong. It was her, the woman I had married, the woman who was supposed to have my back. And now, she was still there, inside that house, with them. Would she follow me? Would she fight for me? Or would she stay exactly where she had always been, comfortable in a world where I was nothing more than an outsider? I tightened my grip on the wheel and exhaled slowly. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. I knew who it was. I knew what they would say. But I wasn't in the mood for excuses, for empty words meant to smooth things over. For years, I had played along, pretending like it didn't bother me, laughing off their insults to keep the peace. But tonight, something had shifted. Something had broken. The car cut through the quiet streets, the city lights reflecting against the windshield as I made my way home. I pulled into the driveway and killed the engine, staring at the darkened windows of our house. It looked the same as always, warm, inviting, familiar, but something about it felt different now. It didn't feel like home. I stepped out, the night air sharp against my skin, and walked to the front door. Unlocking it felt mechanical, as if I were stepping into someone else's life rather than my own. The house was silent when I entered, the absence of Vanessa heavier than I expected. She wasn't here. She had stayed at the dinner. That realization hit harder than I thought it would. I sighed, running a hand through my hair, and made my way to the living room. I wasn't tired, not really, but my body felt drained. I sat down on the couch, leaning forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the coffee table without really seeing it. Then, my phone buzzed again. I finally looked at it. Vanessa, where are you? Come back inside. You're overreacting. I scoffed. Overreacting. Of course. She still didn't get it. Another buzz. Margaret, her mother. Daniel, this is childish. This is a family gathering. Act like an adult. Another. Richard, her father, enough of this nonsense. Get back here before you embarrass yourself further. Embarrass myself? A bitter chuckle escaped my lips. I was the one embarrassed. After they treated me like a second-class citizen in my own marriage? After they openly humiliated me in front of an entire room? I rubbed a hand over my face, the exhaustion settling deeper in my bones. They weren't panicking because they cared. They were panicking because I had done something unexpected. Because, for the first time, I had refused to play my part. My phone kept vibrating, one message after another, each one filled with the same dismissive tone, the same condescending expectation that I would fall back in line. Eric, her brother, dude, what the hell? Just come back. You're making it worse. Melissa, her sister, you're making mom upset. This isn't necessary. It was all about them. Their discomfort. Their embarrassment. Not one message asked how I felt. Not one of them apologized. Not even Vanessa. I exhaled sharply, standing up and pacing the room. My chest felt tight, my mind whirling. I had always known her family looked down on me, but tonight had exposed something worse. Vanessa didn't just tolerate their behavior. She accepted it. She condoned it. She expected me to accept it too. And that was something I could never ignore again. I looked down at my phone, scrolling through the endless flood of messages, then paused. My eyes landed on the picture I had taken earlier, of the tiny table in the corner where they had expected me to sit. The image spoke volumes. It was proof. Without thinking twice, I clicked on the family group chat and sent it, along with a single caption. Interesting choice of seating for your son-in-law. Hope the adults are enjoying their meal. Then, I turned off my phone and waited. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, I simply stood there, staring at the blank screen, feeling the weight of what I had just done. I had never pushed back before. I had always let them have their way, let them brush off my feelings, let them pretend I didn't matter. But now, they had to confront it. Minutes passed. Then, my phone buzzed violently. A dozen missed calls. Messages coming in rapid succession. Vanessa, Margaret, Eric, even Richard, the man who barely spoke to me unless it was to make a passive-aggressive comment, was now demanding that I answer my phone. They were panicking. Because, for the first time, they weren't the ones in control. I didn't pick up. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the counter. I wasn't in a rush. Let them sweat. Let them wonder. Let them feel what it was like to be ignored, dismissed, pushed aside. After all, they had done it to me for years. Another call came through. This time, I let it ring out just long enough before answering. Vanessa's voice was tight, controlled, but there was an edge of unease. Daniel, we need to talk. I took a slow sip of water. Then talk. A pause. She wasn't used to this version of me. You can't just leave like that, she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. It's Christmas. My family is upset. I let out a low chuckle. Oh, they're upset? That's interesting. Because I was humiliated in front of them, and not one of you cared until I walked out. Silence. Then, the inevitable excuse. It wasn't meant that way. You're overthinking it. There it was. The gaslighting. The dismissal. The refusal to acknowledge what had really happened. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice even. Vanessa, I want you to hear me clearly. I am not some outsider to be pushed aside. I am your husband, your partner. And if you can't see me as your equal, maybe you shouldn't have married me. She sucked in a breath. For the first time, she had no response. And I wasn't waiting for one. The silence on the other end of the call stretched longer than I expected. For a moment, I wondered if Vanessa had hung up. If she had finally run out of excuses, of justifications, of empty reassurances. But then, she let out a breath, shaky, uneven. Daniel. Her voice was softer now, hesitant. Can we talk about this in person? I leaned back against the kitchen counter, gripping my phone a little tighter. She wanted to talk? Now, after hours of pretending I didn't matter, after letting her family humiliate me like I was nothing, I let the silence linger, making her feel the weight of her request. Then I spoke, my voice steady but firm. No, you don't get to control when we talk about this, Vanessa. You had your chance, back at that dinner, when you could have stopped it from happening in the first place. A pause. Then, I didn't think it would bother you this much. I almost laughed. Bother me? I had swallowed so much over the years, bit my tongue, forced a smile, let them dismiss me time and time again. And now, when I finally reached my breaking point, she acted like I was the one making a scene. I'll call you later, I said flatly, and ended the call before she could argue. I exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over my face. I had expected her to be defensive. I had expected her to make excuses. But hearing her say, I didn't think it would bother you this much, that cut deeper than I anticipated. Because what she really meant was, I didn't think you'd stand up for yourself. She had grown used to me enduring, to me being the husband who let things slide for the sake of peace. She had never truly considered that I might walk away. Well, now she knew. My phone buzzed again. Not a call this time. A message. From Vanessa. I hesitated, then unlocked my screen. Vanessa. Daniel, please. Let's not do this over text. I don't want to fight. I stared at the message for a long moment. She didn't want to fight. Of course, she didn't. Because fighting meant she would have to acknowledge what she had done. Fighting meant she would have to admit that she had let them disrespect me, that she had been complicit in it. I scrolled through the other messages that had come in while we were on the phone. Margaret, her mother, Daniel, be reasonable. We all love you. No one meant to offend you. Richard, her father, you're acting childish. If you want respect, you earn it. Walking away won't get you anywhere. Eric, her brother, dude, this is ridiculous. Just come back and stop making a big deal out of nothing. I clenched my jaw, staring at the words. Nothing. To them, this was nothing. They didn't see it. They didn't want to see it. I scrolled further, past the dismissive messages, until I reached the one I had sent earlier. The picture of the tiny table where they had expected me to sit, accompanied by my single-line caption. Interesting choice of seating for your son-in-law. Hope the adults are enjoying their meal. I knew it had struck a nerve. Their frantic messages had only increased after I sent it. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about how they looked. That's when a new message popped up, this time from an unexpected number. Her aunt, the one who usually stayed quiet during these family gatherings. The one who never joined in when they mocked me, but never defended me either. Caroline, I saw your message. I just wanted to say, I understand why you left. You deserved better tonight. I'm sorry no one said it at the time. I blinked. I reread her words, my fingers tightening around my phone. Someone got it. Someone, even if it wasn't Vanessa, had seen what happened and acknowledged it. And yet, it only made me angrier. Because if Caroline saw it, then so did the rest of them. They just didn't care. I exhaled sharply and typed a reply. Me. Thank you for saying that. But it shouldn't have taken me leaving for someone to admit it. I sent it without hesitation. A minute later, she replied. Caroline, you're right. It shouldn't have. I hope Vanessa understands what she did before it's too late. I stared at her words, feeling a weight settle in my chest. Before it's too late. It already felt too late. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about tonight. This was about every time Vanessa had let them treat me like an outsider. Every time she had laughed along when they belittled my work. Every time she had stood silent when they dismissed my accomplishments. I had always told myself it didn't matter. That we were a team, that our marriage was stronger than their opinions. But was it? Or had I just been lying to myself all along? I sat there, the silence pressing in around me, until another buzz broke through my thoughts. Vanessa again. Vanessa, I'm coming home. Can we talk? I let out a slow breath. She was coming home. Not because she had realized what she had done. Not because she had defended me in that house. But because I had forced her to confront it. And for the first time, I didn't know if that was enough. I put my phone down and ran a hand over my face. She would be home soon. And when she walked through that door, we would have a conversation we should have had years ago. But this time, I wasn't going to let her brush it aside. This time, she was going to listen. And this time, I wasn't the one begging to be heard. I sat in the dimly lit living room, my mind racing as I waited. The silence of the house pressed in around me, thick and heavy, but I didn't turn on the TV or scroll through my phone. I just sat there, staring at the front door, waiting for Vanessa to walk through it. I had expected this moment for years, the inevitable confrontation. I had always known that one day I would snap. That one day I would stop swallowing my pride for the sake of keeping the peace. That one day she would finally see that her family's behavior wasn't just annoying, wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was degrading. It was humiliating. And the worst part? She had let it happen. The sound of tires crunching over gravel outside made me exhale slowly, bracing myself. I heard the car door slam, hurried footsteps up the porch steps, and then the jangle of keys. A moment later, the door swung open. Vanessa stepped inside, her expression tense, her coat still clutched tightly in her hands as if she had driven here in a hurry. Her eyes locked onto mine immediately, scanning my face, searching for an opening, an easy way back in. I didn't give her one. She closed the door behind her and let out a slow breath. Daniel. I leaned back against the couch, arms crossed. You're home earlier than I expected. Her lips parted, but she hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. I left as soon as I could. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Did you? Or did you wait until the embarrassment set in? She flinched. Just barely. But I saw it. Daniel, please, she said softly, stepping closer. Can we just talk? I nodded once. Go ahead. She hesitated again, her grip on her coat tightening. I didn't think it would turn into all of this. All of what? I pressed. She exhaled sharply. This. You leaving. The texts. The entire family blowing up my phone because they don't know what to do with this situation. I arched a brow. So, let me get this straight. You're upset because of the situation, not because of what actually happened. She let out a frustrated sigh. No, that's not what I meant. Then say what you mean, Vanessa, I said evenly. Her jaw tightened, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something she wasn't used to feeling in our arguments. Uncertainty. Because for the first time, I wasn't bending. I wasn't smoothing things over. I wasn't letting her dictate how this conversation would go. I made a mistake, she finally admitted. I should have handled it differently. I tilted my head slightly. What part of it was a mistake? She frowned. Daniel, don't do this. No, I need you to say it. I pressed. Because if you can't even acknowledge what the problem was, then we don't have anything to talk about. She swallowed, looking away for a moment before sighing. I should have made sure you had a seat at the main table. I should have said something when I saw what my parents did. I studied her, waiting. But, she sighed again, her frustration mounting. But it wasn't intentional, Daniel. My parents weren't trying to hurt you. They just what? I cut in, my voice sharp. She faltered, looking at me like she had never really seen me before. They just don't respect me. I finished for her. That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? Her silence was deafening. I leaned forward, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. You knew what they were doing. You knew the message they were sending. And you let it happen anyway. She swallowed hard, her face betraying her internal battle. They were calling me less than. They were showing me, and everyone else, that I'm not really part of your family, that I never have been. And you just sat there and smiled like it was nothing. Her eyes glistened, her throat bobbing as she struggled to find words. Finally, she whispered, I didn't think about it that way. I laughed, shaking my head. That's the problem, Vanessa. You never do. She let out a shaky breath, finally dropping her coat onto the chair beside her. She looked exhausted, like the weight of the night had finally caught up with her. My family is in full damage control mode, she admitted. I leaned back, arms still crossed. Of course they are. They're not used to being called out. She nodded slowly. They're worried about how this looks. I snorted. Oh, I'm sure they are. She bit her lip, hesitating again. My mom wants to call you. My dad, too. They think if they just explain, they can save face. I finished for her. She exhaled sharply, rubbing her forehead. Yes. I studied her, my next words careful but firm. What about you? She looked up, confused. What? I tilted my head. What do you think? Do you actually believe they did nothing wrong? Or are you just caught between them and me, trying to make this all go away? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. And there it was. The hesitation. The unwillingness to pick a side. I let the silence stretch between us before nodding. That's what I thought. Her brows furrowed. Daniel, that's not fair. Isn't it? I shot back. I walked away tonight because I realized something. I realized that no matter how much I've tried, I will never be good enough for your family. And the worst part is, neither will you. She inhaled sharply, clearly not expecting that. I continued, my voice low but steady. You think they respect you? You think they actually see you? No. They see a daughter who married beneath her station, a wife who should have chosen better. And as long as you keep trying to make them happy, you'll never be happy yourself. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. That's not true, isn't it? I said again, my voice quieter now. She shook her head, her expression cracking. Daniel, I don't want to lose you. I exhaled, feeling the weight of her words. I don't want to lose you either, Vanessa, I admitted. But I also don't want to be in a marriage where I'm constantly treated like an outsider, where I have to fight for basic respect, where my own wife doesn't stand up for me when it matters. She sniffed, wiping at her eyes. So what do we do? I took a slow breath. That's up to you. She looked up at me, desperate now. What do you mean? I met her gaze, unwavering. I mean, I've already made my decision. I'm not going back to that house. I'm not playing their games. If you want to stay in this marriage, you need to choose. You can't keep trying to please them while ignoring what that does to us. She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Fear that she might actually lose me. Fear that for the first time in our marriage, she was the one who had to fight to keep me. And the terrifying part? I didn't know if I wanted her to succeed. Vanessa sat across from me, her body tense, her fingers curled into her lap. The weight of my last words hung in the air between us, heavy, suffocating. I had never put her in this position before, never forced her to choose. And now that I had, I could see the fear in her eyes. Not just fear of losing me, but fear of finally having to face the truth she had avoided for so long. She wasn't just caught between me and her family. She had been complicit in this. And now, she had to own it. She cleared her throat, her voice small. Daniel, this isn't what I wanted. I tilted my head slightly, studying her. No? Then what did you want, Vanessa? She exhaled, rubbing her hands together. I wanted a night where things went smoothly. A night where we could just be together without drama. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. Smoothly? Vanessa, you let your family humiliate me. And you smiled through it. She flinched, but I wasn't done. I have spent years trying to make this marriage work. I continued, my voice steady but firm. I have ignored the little digs, the dismissive looks, the way your father never actually acknowledges my accomplishments because they don't fit his definition of success. I let it go every time your mother treated me like a guest in my own home. I let it go when your brother spoke to me like I was some charity case. She looked away, guilt flashing across her face. But tonight wasn't little, I pressed. Tonight was deliberate. It was planned. And you? I pointed at her, my chest tightening. You let it happen. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you. I leaned forward, my voice low. But you did. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as if trying to stop herself from breaking down. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to fight with my parents over something that could have just been a misunderstanding. I finished, my voice sharp. She nodded hesitantly. I let out a slow breath, gripping the edge of the table to keep my frustration in check. Vanessa, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a message. And you didn't just allow it, you reinforced it. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Understanding. The realization that this wasn't just about a dinner. This was about every time she had chosen them over me. Every time she had let them belittle me because it was easier than standing up for me. Every time she had expected me to just take it. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know how to fix this. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. That's the problem, Vanessa. You shouldn't have to fix this. You should have never let it happen in the first place. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we had never said out loud before. She wiped at her eyes and swallowed thickly. I love you. I exhaled sharply. That's not enough. Her face crumpled. I can't be in a marriage where I feel like I'm fighting for basic respect. I continued, my voice quieter now, more raw. I can't be with someone who is afraid to stand up for me. She let out a small, broken laugh. Afraid? Daniel, yes, afraid. I cut in. Because the truth is, you still care more about what they think than how I feel. She shook her head. That's not true. Then prove it. She froze. I leaned forward, my gaze locking onto hers. Prove it, Vanessa. Call your parents. Right now. Tell them what they did was wrong. Tell them you're not going to allow them to treat me like that anymore. She inhaled sharply. Daniel, No excuses, I interrupted. If you really mean it, if you really see what they did as wrong, then prove it. She looked down at her lap, her breathing uneven. The hesitation in her posture, the way she bit her lip, the way she thought about it instead of just doing it. That told me everything I needed to know. I sat back, my chest aching in a way I hadn't expected. She wasn't going to do it. She wasn't ready. Or maybe, she never would be. Tears slipped down her cheeks, her fingers tightening into fists. I don't want to lose you. I let out a slow breath. Then you shouldn't have treated me like I was disposable. Her shoulders trembled. For a long moment, we just sat there, staring at each other, both of us realizing that something between us had shifted. Something had broken, and I didn't know if it could be put back together. She finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you want me to do? I met her gaze, my own voice steady. I want you to decide who you're married to, me or them. She sucked in a breath. I stood, running a hand through my hair. I'm going to bed. She wiped at her face, sniffling. Daniel, I need time to think, I said simply. And so do you. Then, without another word, I walked down the hall, leaving her sitting there alone. Because for the first time in our marriage, I was the one making the decision. And I wasn't sure she would like my answer. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts circling like vultures over everything that had happened. Over everything I had allowed to happen. The humiliation at that dinner, the years of being an outsider in my own marriage, the way Vanessa had hesitated when I asked her to take a stand. She wasn't ready. Maybe she never would be. The bedroom door never opened. I had expected Vanessa to come in, to try to talk, to try to plead her case. But she didn't. I heard her moving around in the living room long into the night, heard the occasional sniffle, but she never came to find me. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. When the first traces of morning light slipped through the blinds, I finally sat up, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing against my bones. I ran a hand over my face and exhaled, knowing today wouldn't be any easier. Because if Vanessa had done nothing last night, that meant her family was still in damage control mode. And I wasn't going to make it easy for them. The moment I stepped out of the bedroom, my phone vibrated. I checked the screen. Richard, her father, we need to talk. Call me. I smirked. Of course, now he wanted to talk. I ignored the message and walked toward the kitchen, only to find Vanessa already there, standing by the counter with a cup of coffee in her hands. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her shoulders slumped. She glanced at me, hesitant. Good morning. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee, taking my time, making her wait. She shifted uncomfortably. My dad wants to talk to you. I took a slow sip of coffee. Yeah, I saw. She bit her lip. Are you going to call him? I set my cup down and met her gaze. Why? So he can tell me I embarrassed myself? That I should have just accepted what happened and moved on. Her lips parted, but she hesitated. Because that's what's happening, isn't it? I continued. They're not calling to apologize. They're calling to control the narrative. To make sure I don't make them look bad. Vanessa exhaled sharply, looking down. Daniel, Before she could finish, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Margaret, her mother, we need to move past this. Call Richard back. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Wow, they don't even pretend, do they? Vanessa looked at me, uncertain. They don't care how I feel, I said. They just want to make this go away. She swallowed, gripping her coffee cup tighter. They're not good at apologies. I scoffed. No, Vanessa, they just don't do apologies. A tense silence stretched between us. Then another buzz. Eric, her brother, dude, just pick up. It's not that deep. That was it. I set my coffee down and turned to face Vanessa fully. Do you see this? Do you finally see it? She looked at my phone, at the string of messages, her expression conflicted. They are still acting like I'm the problem, I said, my voice calm but sharp. They are still trying to control the situation instead of actually taking responsibility. And you, I pointed at her, are still standing between us like a mediator instead of choosing a side. Her face crumpled. Daniel, I am choosing. Then show me, I interrupted. Because right now, all I see is someone who wants to smooth things over instead of actually facing the truth. She inhaled shakily, staring down at her coffee like it held all the answers. What do you want me to do? I grabbed my phone and held it out to her. You want to prove that you choose me? That you actually see what's wrong? Then text them back yourself. Her head snapped up. What? I kept my hand extended. Tell them the truth. Tell them they were wrong. That I was disrespected. That you're not going to let it happen again. She hesitated. Again. That was all the answer I needed. I exhaled slowly and pulled my phone back. That's what I thought. Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel. I held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. She wiped at her face, frustration bleeding into her expression. You don't understand. No, I cut in. I do understand. I understand that after everything, you still can't bring yourself to stand up to them. I understand that you care more about keeping the peace than you do about standing by your husband. Her hands trembled around her coffee cup. Then, finally, she whispered, if I do this, they'll never forgive me. I let her words settle between us. And then I nodded. Now you get it. Her breath hitched. They've never really forgiven you for marrying me, have they? I asked quietly. And they never will. She let out a shaky breath, her shoulders slumping. I've spent years thinking I was the one who didn't belong, I said. But the truth is, you don't either. Not really. Because the moment you stop playing by their rules, you'll be just as disposable as me. Tears slipped down her cheeks. That's not fair, isn't it? I murmured. She sniffled, wiping at her face, her hands shaking. I don't know what to do. I studied her for a long moment. Then, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and started typing. She watched me, confused, until she heard the sound of a message being sent. Her own phone buzzed a second later. She looked at it hesitantly, then picked it up, her eyes scanning the screen. Me. I'll make it easy for you, Vanessa. I'm leaving for a few days. You have time to decide where you stand. But when I come back, I need an answer, not an excuse. She sucked in a sharp breath. Daniel. I pocketed my phone, grabbed my keys from the counter, and walked to the door. She followed quickly, panic creeping into her voice. Wait, where are you going? I opened the door but paused, looking back at her one last time. I gave you a choice last night, I said softly. You didn't take it. She stared at me, shaking her head. You can't just. I can. I stepped out onto the porch, the morning air cool against my skin. She stood frozen in the doorway, her entire world shifting beneath her. And I, for the first time in years, I felt free. The engine hummed beneath my fingers as I gripped the steering wheel, but I didn't start driving. I just sat there, staring through the windshield, watching the early morning light stretch across the horizon. I wasn't leaving because I was running away. I was leaving because I needed to know if Vanessa would follow. I had spent years chasing after her love, after her acceptance, after her family's approval. And where had that gotten me? Sitting at a tiny table meant for children, while the people who were supposed to be my family barely acknowledged my existence. No more. I exhaled slowly and finally pulled out of the driveway, feeling a strange sense of relief settle over me. I didn't have a set destination, but I knew I needed space. Needed to be somewhere where the weight of last night's betrayal didn't press so heavily against my chest. I ended up at a small hotel just outside the city, the kind of place that didn't ask questions when a man checked in with nothing but a single bag and a tired expression. I paid for a few nights up front and let myself into the quiet room, the sound of the door clicking shut behind me feeling strangely final. Then I sat down on the edge of the bed, my phone still silent in my hand. I didn't text Vanessa. I didn't call. I had already said what needed to be said. Now it was up to her. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher in the sky, and still, nothing. No messages. No missed calls. Maybe that was my answer. I leaned back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. The logical part of me knew I was doing the right thing. That a marriage where I constantly had to fight for basic respect wasn't a marriage worth saving. But the other part? The part that still remembered the woman I fell in love with? That part was struggling. I didn't want to lose her. But I also didn't want to keep losing myself just to stay with her. By the time the sun had set, my phone finally buzzed. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Vanessa. She exhaled sharply, as if she had been holding her breath. Daniel, where are you? I didn't answer. Did you think about what I said? She hesitated. Can we talk in person? I closed my eyes. That depends. Are you ready to give me an answer? Another pause. Then, yes. I exhaled slowly. Then meet me at the park by the lake. Tomorrow morning. No family. No distractions. Just us. She agreed without hesitation, which surprised me. Maybe, just maybe, she had finally realized what was at stake. The next morning, I arrived at the park early. The lake was calm, the water reflecting the early light, and I stood by the benches, waiting. I heard her before I saw her. The sound of hesitant footsteps on the gravel path. I turned, and there she was. Vanessa looked different. Not physically. She was still the same beautiful woman I had married, still the same person I had built a life with. But her face looked raw, uncertain, like she had spent the entire night wrestling with herself. She stopped a few feet away, clutching the strap of her purse. You really left. I nodded. Yeah. She swallowed. I didn't think you would. That's the problem, Vanessa, I said quietly. You never thought I would. Her eyes glistened, but she held my gaze. I thought about everything you said. About how I've let my family treat you. About how I've handled things. I didn't speak. I let her say the words herself. She took a shaky breath. I was wrong. Something in my chest tightened, but I stayed silent. She stepped closer. I should have stood up for you. I should have defended you the moment they treated you like you didn't belong. I should have realized that by staying quiet, I was choosing them over you. I studied her face carefully, looking for any sign of hesitation. I didn't see any. I called my parents, she admitted. I told them what they did was wrong, that I wouldn't tolerate it anymore, that if they want to be in our lives, they have to respect you. I blinked. That I hadn't expected. And I asked. She let out a short, humorless laugh. They were furious. My dad tried to say I was being dramatic. My mom cried. My brother told me I was making a big mistake. She looked up at me, but I didn't back down. A long silence stretched between us. She had done it. She had finally picked a side. But now, the question was it enough? She must have seen the uncertainty in my expression, because she took another step closer, her voice softer now. Daniel, I love you. And I know that's not enough, not after everything. But I see you now. I see what I let happen. And I swear to you, it won't happen again. I studied her for a long moment, letting the weight of her words settle. Then I exhaled. I believe you. Her breath hitched. You do? I nodded slowly. But believing you isn't the same as forgetting. She swallowed hard. I know. I let out another slow breath, glancing out at the lake. I need time, Vanessa. I need to know that this isn't just a temporary change. That you're not just saying this because you're afraid of losing me. She nodded, her hands gripping her purse tighter. Whatever you need. I'll prove it to you. I turned back to her. And you need to understand something. I'm done being treated like an outsider. Done pretending I'm okay with it. If you ever let them disrespect me again, if you ever make me feel like I don't belong, I will walk away. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't look away. I won't let that happen again. For the first time in years, I actually believed her. I reached for her hand, testing the waters, and she clutched mine tightly, like she was afraid to let go. Maybe we weren't past this yet. Maybe it would take time. But for the first time in our marriage, I felt like we actually had a chance. Because now, Vanessa wasn't just standing next to me. She was finally standing with me. Vanessa's fingers tightened around mine, as if she thought I might disappear if she let go. There was a desperation in her grip, a silent plea wrapped around her trembling touch. But desperation wasn't enough. Not anymore. I looked down at our hands, at the years we had built together, the love that had once been effortless, now hanging in the balance of a single choice. A choice she had finally made. She had stood up to her family. She had called them out. But was it because she had changed, or because she was afraid of losing me? That was the question. She wiped at her face, exhaling shakily. Daniel, I don't want us to end like this. I watched her, studying her face. The worry creased into her forehead, the raw vulnerability in her eyes. This wasn't the polished, composed woman I had married. This was someone realizing, for the first time, that love wasn't enough if respect wasn't there. Neither do I said finally. Her breath hitched, as if she had been bracing for something worse. I let go of her hand, not as a rejection, but as a statement. But I need time. Her face fell. Time. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. I believe you meant everything you said. I believe you want to change. But I also know that change doesn't happen overnight. I looked away, staring at the lake, my thoughts pulling me back to all the nights I had convinced myself that things would get better, only for them to get worse. She swallowed hard, wiping her face. So, what does that mean for us? I turned back to her. It means I'm not coming home right away. She flinched, her shoulders tensing. I exhaled slowly. I don't want to make a decision based on emotions. I need space to figure out if I can trust this change, if I can trust you not to let it happen again. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't argue. And that, more than anything, told me she knew this was the only way forward. How long? She whispered. I shook my head. I don't know. A few weeks. Maybe more. She nodded slowly, as if forcing herself to accept it. And if you decide you can't forgive me? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Then I won't come back. Her whole body tensed. Vanessa, I said gently, stepping closer. This isn't about punishing you. It's about making sure we don't end up back here again. Because if I come home before I'm ready, before I know for sure that I can trust you to stand by me, then this will keep happening. And I can't live like that anymore. She let out a shaky breath, nodding. I understand. A silence stretched between us, heavy and uncertain. She reached for my hand again, and this time, I let her. When you come back, she said softly, I want you to know that I'll be the wife you deserve. I swallowed past the tightness in my throat. I hope so. Her fingers brushed over mine one last time before she slowly let go, stepping back. I love you, Daniel. I nodded. I love you too. But love wasn't the problem. Respect was. And now, only time would tell if she had truly learned that. I watched as she turned, walking back toward her car, her posture uncertain, her steps slower than usual, like she wasn't sure if she was walking toward the future or away from it. I didn't know either. All I knew was that, for the first time in years, I wasn't the one chasing after her. I was finally standing still. And this time, she had to be the one to come back to me. I arrived at my wife's law firm party and said my name. The staff looked confused. Your name is not here. I looked for my wife and asked her. She rolled her eyes. Did you really think you'd be invited? I smiled calmly. I understood perfectly. And I left. But in the middle of the ceremony, her phone started ringing nonstop. You know that feeling when you're about to walk into a room where you absolutely belong, but some cosmic joke decides you don't? Yeah, welcome to my Tuesday night. I'm standing outside Holt and Barkley LLP, the glass palace where my wife basically lives, adjusting my tie for the third time because apparently I still give a damn about looking presentable at these dog and pony shows. The firm's annual gala. Black tie, champagne that costs more than most people's car payments, and enough legal eagles in one room to make the Supreme Court jealous. I pushed through those ridiculous revolving doors that probably cost more than my first apartment, and immediately I'm hit with that familiar cocktail of marble, money, and the faint scent of desperation masked by expensive cologne. The lobby stretches out like some modernist fever dream, all sharp angles and surfaces so polished you could perform surgery on them. There's this massive sculpture hanging from the ceiling that Sabrina once described to me as justice in motion. Personally, I think it looks like someone threw a bunch of metal scraps into a blender and called it art. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy who helped pay for this place. The check-in table sits dead center, manned by Priya, sweet kid, probably makes more in a year than I did my first 5 years out of college. But she's got this nervous energy that tells me she's still trying to prove she belongs here too. I walk up with the confidence of a man whose wife's name is literally on the building. Well, half the building. Holt and Barkley. You'd think that would count for something. Rowan Pierce, I say, flashing what I hope passes for a charming smile. I'm here for the gala. Priya's fingers dance across her iPad screen with the precision of a concert pianist. Once, twice. Her eyebrows do this little furrow thing that immediately tells me everything I need to know, but I'm still holding on to hope because optimism is apparently my default setting, even when life keeps serving me reality checks on a silver platter. She bites her lip, never a good sign when someone's looking at a guest list, and gives me that smile that customer service reps perfect when they're about to deliver bad news. I'm sorry, sir, your name isn't on the list. For a second, I just stand there, not angry, not confused, just processing. Like when your computer freezes and you keep clicking things hoping it'll unstick itself. Except the computer is my brain and the frozen program is my understanding of where I fit in this whole picture. I scan the lobby, taking in the scene like I'm seeing it for the first time. Partners in black tie cluster around cocktail tables, their laughter echoing off those pristine walls in a way that sounds rehearsed. Associates hover at the edges, nursing drinks and networking like their professional lives depend on it. Which, let's be honest, they probably do. Everyone's dressed to impress. Everyone's playing their part in this elaborate theater of success. And there, right in the center of it all like she was born to command a room, is Sabrina, my wife. draped in a silver gown that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent, surrounded by a semicircle of associates who hang on her every word like she's delivering the Sermon on the Mount, instead of probably discussing billable hours or case strategy. She looks magnificent. She looks powerful. She looks like she belongs here in a way that I apparently don't. I make my way over, weaving through clusters of conversations about market trends and regulatory changes, past the hors d'oeuvres table where someone's inevitably complaining about the catering budget while eating $50 appetizers. The closer I get to Sabrina, the more I can hear her voice, confident, authoritative, the voice of someone who's never doubted her place in the world. Sabrina, I say, gently interrupting whatever legal wisdom she's dispensing to her audience. Hey, there's been some kind of mistake. I'm not on the list. She turns to look at me, and for just a split second, I see something flicker across her face. Not surprise, not concern, something else. Something that makes my stomach do a little flip. Then she rolls her eyes. Actually rolls her eyes, like I'm some kind of inconvenient interruption to her evening. Did you really think you'd be invited? She asks, and her voice carries just enough volume that the associates around her can't hear. Just enough edge that there's no mistaking this for playful banter. Now, here's the thing about moments like this. You know, those moments when your whole world tilts just slightly off its axis and suddenly everything looks different? Sometimes your body reacts before your brain catches up. Sometimes you expect to feel heat, anger, that burning sensation in your chest that comes with humiliation. But what I feel instead is cold. Not the angry kind of cold, not the bitter kind. Just clarity, like jumping into a mountain lake and suddenly being wide awake. I feel my chest cool, not burn. And you know what? I smile. Not the fake smile you paste on when you're trying to save face in front of people who don't matter. A real smile. The kind that comes when puzzle pieces finally click into place, when you finally understand the game you've been playing without realizing it. I understand perfectly, I tell her, and I mean it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I actually do understand. Perfectly. I turn around and walk away. Not storming off, not making a scene, just walking. Past the sculpture that symbolizes justice in motion. Past Priya at the check-in desk, who's pretending not to watch this little domestic drama unfold. Past all the partners and associates who are probably already mentally composing the office gossip they'll spread tomorrow. Through those ridiculous revolving doors and out into the night. The cold air hits my face like a slap, but a good kind of slap. The kind that wakes you up when you didn't even realize you'd been sleepwalking. I stand there on the sidewalk for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of the gala continuing without me, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as the party goes on. Nobody's looking for me. Nobody's wondering where I went. The machine just keeps running, smooth as ever. I pull out my phone and scroll to a contact I haven't called in weeks. Celine Park. My attorney. My oldest friend. The one person in my life who's never asked me to be smaller than I am, never suggested I dim my light, so someone else could shine brighter. She picks up on the second ring. Rowan? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I tell her, and for the first time in longer than I care to admit, I actually mean it. Celine, we proceed, exactly as planned. There's a pause on the other end of the line. Then a sound that might be a chuckle, might be satisfaction, might be both. Are you sure? I look back at the glowing windows of Holt and Barclay, at the celebration I'm not invited to, at the life I've been funding and supporting and cheering from the sidelines, at the woman in the silver gown who just made it crystal clear where I stand in her hierarchy of importance. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. So there I am, sitting in my car outside the Palace of Legal Eagles, and my brain decides this is the perfect time for a little trip down memory lane. Because apparently, humiliation makes you nostalgic. Who knew? I lean back in the driver's seat and let myself remember how this whole beautiful disaster started. Picture this. Me, 26 years old, thinking I knew everything about everything, walking into O'Malley's pub on a rainy Thursday night in March. The kind of night where the beer tastes better because your bones are cold and the whole world feels like it's washing clean outside. And there she was, Sabrina Holt. Though back then she was just Sabrina Morrison, a second-year law student at State, who looked like she hadn't slept in approximately 3 weeks. She was hunched over a corner table, surrounded by enough law books to stock a small library, picking at a plate of nachos that had gone cold about an hour ago. Her hair was doing that thing where it looks like she'd been running her hands through it all day, and she had this intense concentration face that made her look like she was trying to solve world hunger through contract law. I should have known right then that this woman was going to turn my life upside down. But did I listen to that little voice in my head? Hell no. Instead, I walked over and did what any red-blooded American male would do when faced with a beautiful woman stress-eating nachos at midnight. I offered to buy her another beer. I can't afford another beer, she said without looking up from her textbook. I can barely afford these nachos. And before you offer to buy it for me, I should probably mention that I'm surviving on instant ramen and the kind of panic that makes your eye twitch. I liked her immediately, not because she was gorgeous, though let's be honest, she was, but because she was real. No pretense, no games, just a woman who was honest about being broke and stressed, and probably living on 3 hours of sleep and pure caffeine. So naturally, I fell for her like a house of cards in a windstorm. That was the beginning of what I now recognize as the most expensive relationship in the history of modern romance. Not expensive because she was high maintenance. Sabrina wasn't the type to demand designer handbags or weekend trips to the Hamptons. No, this was expensive because I was an idiot who confused love with investment banking. When she mentioned that her financial aid had fallen through, and she was looking at a tuition gap that would make a grown man weep, guess who stepped up with his savings account? When she needed money for bar prep courses that cost more than my car, guess who worked double shifts at the freight company to make it happen? When she graduated and landed that entry-level position at what was then just Barkley and Associates, before they brought Sabrina's sharp legal mind and my connections into the fold, guess who refinanced his condo to help cover her student loan payments so she could focus on making partner instead of worrying about debt? If you guessed, some romantic fool named Rowan Pierce. Congratulations, you win a prize. The prize is the knowledge that love can make otherwise intelligent people do spectacularly stupid things with their financial security. But here's the thing, I wasn't being stupid. At least, I didn't think I was. I was being supportive. I was being the kind of partner who believes in his woman's dreams and puts his money where his mouth is. I was investing in our future, in the life we were going to build together once she made it through those grueling first years at the firm. I kept 2 jobs during her bar prep period. Days at Kestrel Freight managing logistics for companies that moved everything from auto parts to industrial equipment. Nights doing freelance consulting for smaller shipping operations that needed someone who could speak both warehouse and boardroom. I lived on coffee and determination, watching her study until her eyes went bloodshot, bringing her dinner when she forgot to eat, rubbing her shoulders when the stress made her neck seize up like a rusty gate. And you know what? I was proud of her. Ridiculously, stupidly proud. When she passed the bar exam, I probably celebrated harder than she did. When she landed that position at Barkley and Associates, I took her out to the fanciest restaurant I could afford, which, admittedly, wasn't saying much after all those tuition payments. And listened to her talk about her 5-year plan to make partner. That's when I made what I now realize was my first real mistake. I started making introductions. See, working in logistics means you know people. You know the guys who move stuff, the companies that need stuff moved, and the businesses that ensure all that stuff while it's being moved. You know general counsels and risk managers and procurement directors, people who occasionally need legal services and are willing to trust a recommendation from someone they've worked with. So when Sabrina mentioned that the firm was looking to expand their corporate client base, I opened my contact list like it was Christmas morning. Kestrel Freight, where I'd been working for 3 years and had built relationships with everyone from the dock workers to the C-suite. Ironvale Metals, a mid-sized operation that was growing fast and needed legal guidance on expansion contracts. Northstar Bio, a pharmaceutical logistics company that was drowning in regulatory compliance issues and desperately needed someone who understood both the science and the shipping. I made those introductions because I believed in Sabrina's abilities, because I knew she was brilliant and capable and exactly the kind of lawyer these companies needed, because I wanted to see her succeed. And succeed she did. Those clients I brought her, they became the foundation of what eventually became Holt and Barkley LLP. When Old Man Barkley decided to bring Sabrina on as a named partner, it was largely based on the client portfolio she'd built, a portfolio that, if we're being honest, I'd handed her on a silver platter. Did I ask for equity in the firm? No. Did I ask for my name on any letterhead? Hell no. Did I even ask for a formal acknowledgement of my role in building those relationships? You're getting the picture. All I wanted was a seat in the room, a place at the table during the celebrations. Recognition that I was part of this success story, not just some guy who happened to be married to the star. I wore thrift store suits to partner dinners and tried not to feel underdressed next to lawyers who spent more on ties than I made in a week. I clapped too loudly when Sabrina argued her first motion before Judge Morales, a procedural hearing that she turned into a masterclass in preparation and presentation. I learned the names of every associate, every paralegal, every person who mattered in Sabrina's professional world because I wanted to be the kind of husband who supported his wife's career. I just wanted to belong in the life we were building together. Was that really too much to ask? Sitting in my car now, watching the gala continue without me, I'm starting to think maybe it was. You know how they say the devil's in the details? Well, turns out the devil's also in the tiny little cuts that don't seem like much until you realize you're bleeding out from 1,000 paper wounds. That's exactly how Sabrina's transformation from supportive wife to whatever the hell she became happened. One microscopic dismissal at a time. It started so small I almost missed it. We're talking about the kind of thing you brush off because making a big deal about it would make you look petty and insecure. Like when your spouse corrects the way you hold a wine glass at a holiday mixer. Picture this. December, 2 years ago. Holt and Barclay's annual holiday party. Back when they still invited spouses and pretended to care about work-life balance. I'm standing next to Sabrina, nursing a glass of what I'm pretty sure was a $40 Pinot Noir, trying to make small talk with some senior associate who keeps checking his phone every 30 seconds. Normal party stuff, right? Wrong. Apparently, I was holding my wine glass like some kind of barbarian. Rowan, Sabrina said, her voice carrying that particular tone that women perfect when they want to correct you without making it seem like they're correcting you. You hold it by the stem, not the bowl. You're warming the wine. Now, any reasonable person would think, okay, helpful tip about wine etiquette, no big deal. But it was the way she said it. The way she glanced around to make sure nobody had noticed my apparent breach of civilized behavior. The way she subtly repositioned herself so she was standing just slightly apart from me, like my wine-holding incompetence might be contagious. But hey, I'm a reasonable guy. I adjusted my grip and moved on with my life. Then came the Latin incident. God, I still cringe thinking about it. We're at dinner with some potential clients, a biotech company looking for regulatory guidance. And the conversation turns to some legal precedent I'd actually heard about through my work with Northstar Bio. So naturally, I chime in, trying to be part of the conversation like a good husband should. Oh yeah, I said, that's related to that old doctrine. What's it called? Residential ipsa loquitur? Except I pronounced it like res ipsa loquit you are, instead of whatever the correct Latin pronunciation was supposed to be. Close enough for government work, right? Wrong again. Sabrina actually snickered. Not laughed, not chuckled, snickered. Like I was some amateur who'd wandered into a conversation above his pay grade. Then she smoothly corrected my pronunciation while explaining the concept to the clients, effectively erasing my contribution to the discussion entirely. Her friend Kara Winters, this sharp-tongued associate who always looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe, leaned over after dinner and delivered what I now realize was the first real warning shot. You're sweet, Rowan, she said. But maybe leave the legal talk to the lawyers. You're more provincial. Provincial. Like I was some country bumpkin who'd stumbled into the big city with hay in my hair and mud on my boots. Never mind that I'd been working with corporate legal departments for years. Never mind that I understood contracts and liability and risk management better than half the associates at their firm. I was provincial. I laughed it off because that's what you do when someone insults you with a smile. You laugh it off and pretend it doesn't sting. But the hits kept coming, each one a little sharper than the last. Sabrina started asking me to arrive late and leave early at firm events. Not explicitly, of course. She was too smart for that. Instead, she'd mention that cocktail hour was really just for the lawyers to catch up on cases and suggest I show up after dinner. Or she'd point out that the after party at whatever trendy bar they'd picked was probably going to be pretty boring for you, and hint that I might want to head home early. The message was clear. You don't belong here during the important parts. Then she stopped introducing me as my husband and started going with Rowan. He's in logistics. Like my profession was my entire identity, and that identity was somehow lesser than hers. I became Rowan the logistics guy instead of Rowan, my partner in life who helped build this career you're all benefiting from. The worst part? She started telling me not to talk to clients unless they spoke to me first. Think about that for a second. I was the guy who brought half these clients to the firm in the first place. I had relationships with these people that went back years. But suddenly, I needed permission to have a conversation with someone I'd known since before Sabrina even passed the bar exam. It's not personal, she explained when I finally worked up the nerve to ask about it. It's just that clients need to see clear professional boundaries. They need to know who's their lawyer and who's not. Who's not? That's what I'd become. The guy who's not. When Northstar Bio renewed their contract, a six-figure deal that represented a significant chunk of the firm's revenue, Sabrina forgot to invite me to the celebration dinner. Forgot. Like the guy who introduced her to the client in the first place was just some minor detail that slipped her mind. I found out about it 3 days later when Kara posted pictures on social media. There's Sabrina, raising a toast. There's Trent Barkley, looking pleased as punch. There's half the firm's partnership, celebrating a victory that literally would not have existed without my connections. And there's me, sitting at home, watching Netflix and wondering when I became invisible. At home, things weren't much better. Our shared calendar, the one we'd used to coordinate our lives for years, started filling up with depositions and client retreats and partner meetings. My name was never on any of it, not even for the social events that spouses typically attended. It's just easier if I handle the firm calendar separately, Sabrina explained when I mentioned it. Most of these things are work-related anyway. Work-related. Like our marriage existed in a separate universe from her career, instead of being the foundation that made her career possible. My savings account kept shrinking too. Temporary firm costs that I didn't question because I trusted her, because I believed we were building something together. Bar association dues, continuing education seminars, professional wardrobe updates, client entertainment expenses that somehow fell outside the firm's budget. Always temporary, always necessary, always coming out of my pocket. I told myself that love was investment. That marriage was about supporting each other's dreams, even when it cost you. That the temporary sacrifices would pay off in the long run when we were both successful and happy and living the life we'd planned together. But here's the thing about investments. They're supposed to have terms. Clear expectations about returns, timelines, what happens if things don't work out as planned. I had set none of those terms. I just kept writing checks and hoping for the best. Sitting in my car now, I can't help but laugh at my own stupidity. All those little dismissals, all those tiny cuts, all those moments when I should have spoken up and set boundaries. I let them slide because I thought I was being the bigger person. Turns out, being the bigger person just makes you a bigger target. 3 days before the gala, Sabrina dropped the final bomb while I was making coffee in our kitchen. You know, that fancy kitchen with the marble countertops that I'd helped finance, but apparently had no say in decorating. She was sitting at the breakfast bar, scrolling through her phone with that particular brand of focused indifference that successful people use when they're about to deliver news they know you won't like. The partner ceremony is for image, she said without looking up from whatever urgent legal matter was demanding her attention at 7 in the morning. You don't fit it. Just like that. No preamble, no gentle lead-in, no attempt to soften the blow. Just a casual announcement delivered with the same tone she might use to mention that we were out of milk or that she'd be working late again. I stood there holding my coffee mug, one of those ridiculous oversized ones that says, "World's Greatest Husband," that she'd bought me for our second anniversary back when she still pretended to think I was great, and tried to process what she'd just said. You don't fit it. Not, it might be awkward, or maybe it's better if you skip this one. Not even, I'd prefer if you didn't come. Nope, you don't fit it. Like I was a square peg trying to squeeze into a round hole, or a discount suit at a black tie event. What exactly does that mean? I asked, because sometimes when people say something unbelievably hurtful, your brain needs them to clarify just how hurtful they really meant it to be. She finally looked up from her phone, and I could see that little crease between her eyebrows that appeared whenever she had to explain something she considered obvious to someone she considered slow. It means that this event is about the firm's reputation, about presenting the right image to clients and potential clients, about showing that we're serious, professional, Successful people who deserve to be trusted with million-dollar cases. And I don't fit that image. You work in logistics, Rowan. You're a good man, and you're great at what you do, but you're not. She paused, searching for the right words. You're not partner material. You don't have the background, the education, the social polish that these events require. Partner material. Social polish. I felt something shift in my chest, like a tectonic plate finding a new position after years of pressure. The social polish that comes from growing up with money, you mean? That's not what I said, but it's what you meant. She set down her phone and gave me that look, the one that said she was being patient with me, but her patience had limits. Look, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm being practical. These people judge everything: how you dress, how you speak, who you know, what you studied, where you went to school. They're looking for reasons to doubt us, to think we're not worth their seven-figure retainers. I can't afford to give them any ammunition. I can't afford. Not we can't afford. I can't afford. So I'm ammunition now. You're putting words in my mouth. No, I'm just repeating them back to you. That's when she played the card I should have seen coming from a mile away. God, Rowan, why do you have to make everything about you? This is the biggest night of my career. I'm about to become a named partner in one of the most prestigious firms in the state. Can't you just be supportive for once instead of making this into some personal drama? Supportive for once. Like the previous 5 years of financing her dreams and making introductions and sitting quietly in corners while she climbed the ladder I'd helped build were just figments of my imagination. But here's the thing about moments like this. Sometimes clarity comes not with a flash of lightning, but with the simple recognition that you've been living in the dark for so long you'd forgotten what light looked like. I didn't argue with her. I didn't raise my voice or point out the irony or launch into a speech about everything I'd sacrificed for her career. Instead, I did something that probably surprised both of us. I went upstairs, shaved with the expensive shaving cream she'd bought me for Christmas, put on my best tux, the one I'd worn to exactly 3 firm events before being quietly disinvited from the rest, and told her I'd see her at the gala. Rowan, we just talked about this. We did. And I heard you. But here's the thing, Sabrina, marriage is also presence. It's showing up for each other, especially on the big nights. So I'm going to show up. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out whether it was worth having a fight about, or if she could just handle it at the event itself. She chose option B, which tells you everything you need to know about how she really felt about me being there. Fine, but please don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me. Like my mere existence at her celebration was a potential source of humiliation. That night, I called Celine Park. You know how some people have that one friend who always tells them exactly what they need to hear, even when it's not what they want to hear? Celine's that friend. We'd known each other since college, back when she was studying law, and I was figuring out that business logistics was actually pretty fascinating when you got into the nitty-gritty of how things moved from point A to point B. She'd watched my relationship with Sabrina from the beginning, and she'd been the only one brave enough to point out that my investment strategy in Sabrina's career might not be as smart as I thought it was. You need to protect yourself, she'd said about a year ago. Set up some safeguards, some leverage, some way to make sure you're not left holding an empty bag if this goes sideways. At the time, I'd brushed her off. Sabrina and I were partners. We were building something together. We didn't need safeguards and leverage and contingency plans. But Celine, being both a good friend and a damn good lawyer, had helped me set up those protections anyway, just in case. The master services contract with Kestrel Freight that gave me personal discretionary authority over their choice of outside counsel. The equity stake in the tech company that provided document management services to half the law firms in the city, including Holt and Barkley. The building's sublease for the 14th floor event space that had become the firm's go-to venue for client entertainment, held by my LLC, Piers 17 Holdings, a little corporate entity that Sabrina had forgotten existed. All quiet, all legal, all perfectly legitimate business arrangements that I'd entered into during the years when I was still trying to be helpful instead of just present. Are you sure about this? Celine asked when I explained what had happened at the gala. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Once we activate these, there's no going back. She's going to know exactly what you're capable of. Good. It's about time somebody did. Because here's what I'd finally figured out. All those years of being supportive and accommodating and understanding hadn't earned me respect. They'd earn me contempt. All those years of making myself smaller so Sabrina could seem bigger had just convinced her that I was, in fact, smaller. Well, it was time to remind everyone exactly how big I could be when I needed to be. So there I am, standing on the sidewalk outside the glass palace of legal eagles, breathing in that crisp night air like it's the first real oxygen I've had in years. The revolving doors keep spinning behind me, carrying well-dressed lawyers in and out of their exclusive little world, but I'm done being dizzy from trying to keep up with their rotation. I pull out my phone and open up my text messages. 3 contact threads that have been sitting dormant for months, waiting for exactly this moment. 3 simple messages that are about to turn Sabrina's perfect evening into a very educational experience about the difference between partners and props. The first text goes to Marta Quintero, General Counsel at Kestrel Freight. Marta and I go way back. She was actually the one who taught me that the best business relationships are built on trust and clear communication, not fancy degrees and expensive suits. She's the kind of lawyer who gets her hands dirty, who understands that moving freight isn't just about logistics. It's about people trusting you to get their stuff from here to there without drama. I type one word: redirect. That's it. One word that activates a clause in our master services agreement that I'd negotiated 2 years ago when Kestrel was expanding their legal needs. A clause that gives me, personally, the discretionary authority to redirect all of Kestrel's outside counsel work with 30 days' notice. A clause that Sabrina had thought was quaint when I'd mentioned it in passing, like I was playing dress-up in the grown-ups business world. Kestrel represents about 40% of Holt and Barclay's monthly revenue. Funny how quaint clauses can have such non-quaint consequences. The second text goes to Rafi Danish, CEO of Nexus Legal Systems, the tech company that provides document management software to half the law firms in the city. Rafi's one of those brilliant guys who built his business from his garage and never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated by people in expensive suits. I'd invested in Nexus 3 years ago when they were still a startup looking for seed money. Not a huge investment. I'm not exactly swimming in venture capital over here, but enough to give me a 5% equity stake and a seat on their advisory board. Enough to have a say in certain business decisions, including enforcement of contract terms when clients fall behind on their integration fees. Enforce, I type. That one word is going to flip Holt and Barclay's entire document management system into read-only mode until they settle some outstanding fees that have been mysteriously under review for the past 6 months. Fees that Sabrina had assured me were just a temporary accounting issue that would be resolved any day now. The third text goes to Lydia Chun, building manager for the corporate complex that houses the 14th floor event space. Lydia runs that building like a Swiss watch. Everything on time, everything by the book, everything documented in triplicate. She's also the person who deals with my LLC, Piers 17 Holdings, which holds the sublease for the event space that Holt and Barclay uses for all their big client entertainment nights. Invoice clause, I type. That particular clause is my personal favorite. It's buried deep in the sublease agreement, written in the kind of legal language that most people skim over because they assume it's just standard boilerplate. But Celine helped me craft it specifically to address reputational breaches and conduct inconsistent with the professional standards expected of subleasee events. Turns out, publicly humiliating the primary leaseholder's representative at a gala might just qualify as conduct inconsistent with professional standards. And the remedy for such conduct? An immediate surcharge equal to 3 times the standard event fee, plus termination of future booking privileges. Sabrina had argued that our arrangement was just a handshake between friends. But handshakes aren't contracts, and I've always been better with contracts than handshakes. I hit send on all 3 messages, slip my phone back into my pocket, and drive exactly 2 blocks away to a spot where I can see the windows of the ballroom, but won't be obvious to anyone inside. I'm not looking for a fight. I'm looking for truth. And sometimes truth needs a little help making itself heard. The interesting thing about perfectly planned events is how quickly they can become perfectly planned disasters when a few key variables change. It's like watching a complex machine that runs beautifully until someone removes a couple of crucial bolts, and suddenly everything starts making very different kinds of noises. I sit in my car and wait. Not because I'm enjoying the anticipation. Okay, Maybe I'm enjoying it a little, but because I want to see how long it takes for reality to penetrate the bubble of Sabrina's perfect evening. About an hour later, as I'm listening to some classic rock station and wondering if this is what midlife crisis feels like, I can see movement in the ballroom windows. Sabrina's at the podium now, probably giving her speech about everyone who mattered, and how grateful she is for all the support that made this moment possible. I wonder if she'll mention the logistics guy who helped make half of this success possible. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess no. That's when her phone starts ringing. Even from 2 blocks away, I can see the shift in her body language when she glances at her phone and sees whatever emergency is demanding her attention. Then it rings again, and again. Her wrist buzzes, probably her Apple Watch alerting her to urgent emails. Trent's watch starts buzzing too. I can see Priya hurrying toward the dais with that particular kind of urgent walk that means we have a situation. In my mind, I can practically hear the conversation happening in that ballroom. The frantic whispered conferences. The urgent phone calls to IT departments and account managers. The dawning realization that their biggest client has just activated a redirect clause that nobody thought would ever be used. That their document management system has suddenly become about as useful as a chocolate teapot until they settle some mysteriously overdue fees. That their favorite event space has just invoiced them for conduct that somebody apparently found professionally inappropriate. I imagine Sabrina's face as she processes what's happening. The confusion first, then the growing understanding, then the moment when she realizes exactly who has the power to fix all of these problems at once. The best part about having leverage isn't using it. It's the moment when the other person realizes you have it. My phone buzzes. Text message from an unknown number, but I recognize the tone immediately. Fix this. Now. I look up at the ballroom windows one more time, then put my car in drive. Some conversations are better had in person. The next morning, I wake up feeling like I've been hit by a truck full of clarity. You know that feeling when you finally stop hitting your head against a wall and suddenly realize how much your head doesn't hurt anymore? Yeah, that's exactly where I am right now. My phone has been buzzing since about 6 a.m. with increasingly frantic messages from Sabrina, but I've got more important things to do than manage her crisis. I've got some housekeeping to take care of. I make myself a proper breakfast for the first time in months. Real eggs, actual bacon, toast that doesn't come from a package, and sit down at my kitchen table with my laptop and a stack of documents that I've been meaning to review for way too long. Time to remove some safety nets that I never should have provided in the first place. Letter number 1 goes to Harbor Trust Bank. Attention. Commercial Lending Department. This is the big one. The financial nuclear option that I've been pretending didn't exist, because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging just how deep I'd let myself get into this mess. Dear Harbor Trust, I type. I am writing to formally terminate my personal guarantee on business loan account hashtag 47829 BL, issued to Sabrina Holt for partner capital requirements at Holt and Barkley LLP. Here's the thing about personal guarantees that most people don't understand until they're neck deep in other people's debt. They're like co-signing for a teenager's car loan. Except the teenager is a successful attorney, and the car costs about as much as a small house. When Sabrina needed to come up with her partner buy-in, the chunk of change that made her a named partner instead of just another associate grinding billable hours, the bank wanted some additional security beyond her projected earnings. Enter good old Rowan, the supportive husband with decent credit and a paid-off condo, willing to put his financial neck on the line so his wife could achieve her dreams. The loan was for 18 months, just long enough for her partnership income to stabilize and prove to the bank that she could handle the payments on her own. That 18 months ended about 2 years ago. But did anyone bother to remove my guarantee once Sabrina was pulling in partner-level money? Did anyone think to mention that I was still legally responsible for her business debt, even though I apparently wasn't professional enough to attend her business celebrations? Of course not. Why would they? I was the safety net that nobody wanted to think about until they needed it. Well, guess what? Safety nets work both ways. They catch you when you fall, but they also get removed when the person holding them decides they're done being taken for granted. I print the letter on good paper, the kind that says, "This is not a joke," sign it with my fanciest pen, and set it aside for certified mail. Let's see how quickly the bank moves to replace my guarantee when they realize their backup plan just walked out the door. Letter number 2 goes to American Express Business Services. This one's almost funny in how petty it could seem to an outside observer. But petty is just another word for paying attention to details that other people ignore. Please be advised that effective immediately, I am canceling all automatic payments from my personal accounts for American Express business card account hashtag 3785-421-896-74001, held by Sabrina Holt DBA Holt and Barkley LLP. That business card has been running through my checking account for about 3 years now. Nothing dramatic. Just the kind of charges that add up when you're not paying attention. Client dinners that somehow fell outside the firm's entertainment budget. Travel expenses for conferences that were partially personal. Professional wardrobe updates that needed to happen right away before the firm's next billing cycle. Always temporary. Always necessary. Always coming out of my account because it was easier than dealing with the firm's accounting department. You know what's easier? Not paying for other people's business expenses when you're not even invited to their business events. I calculate the running total while I'm writing the letter. 3 years of temporary charges adds up to about the cost of a decent used car. A car that I apparently bought for someone who thinks I'm too provincial to be seen with in public. The third letter is the one I'm most looking forward to writing. This one goes to Ironvale Metals and Northstar Bio. The two biggest clients I'd personally introduced to Holt and Barkley back when I still believed that helping my wife succeed was the same thing as succeeding together. Dear Mr. Harrison and Ms. Patel, I write, addressing the general counsels at both companies. I hope this letter finds you well. As you know, I have had the pleasure of working with your organizations for several years in various logistics and consulting capacities. It has been my privilege to introduce you to the legal services provided by Holt and Barkley LLP, and I am gratified that those relationships have proven mutually beneficial. This is where things get interesting. See, most people assume that once you make an introduction, your role in that relationship is done. You bring two parties together, they hit it off, and you fade into the background while they do business together. But that's not actually how professional relationships work in the real world. In the real world, relationships are maintained by the people who built them. Trust transfers through personal connections, not corporate letterhead. When a general counsel trusts a vendor recommendation, they're trusting the person who made the recommendation, not just the company being recommended. However, I wanted to inform you that I will now be working with an independent firm, Moreno & Shaw, to provide legal services that better align with my consulting practice. Maria Moreno and David Shaw have built a boutique practice that specializes in exactly the kind of pragmatic, client-focused representation that I believe will serve your organizations well. I'd had lunch with Maria Moreno about 6 months ago. Brilliant lawyer, Harvard-educated, but she'd grown up in a family that ran a small trucking company before she went to law school. She understood that business wasn't just about billable hours and partner retreats. It was about real people solving real problems for other real people. She also understood that when you're building a practice, you treat the people who bring you clients like partners, not inconveniences. Moreno & Shaw has expressed great interest in working with organizations like yours, and I believe you will find their approach both professional and refreshingly collaborative. I will be happy to facilitate introductions at your convenience. The beautiful thing about this letter is that it doesn't actually say anything negative about Holt and Barkley. It doesn't even explicitly say that I'm pulling my recommendations. It just mentions that I'm now working with a different firm and would be happy to make introductions. But here's what every general counsel in America will understand when they read between those carefully crafted lines. The guy who brought us this relationship is now working with someone else, and he's suggesting we might want to consider working with someone else too. Corporate loyalty is a funny thing. Companies don't really have relationships with other companies. People have relationships with people. And when the person who built the relationship suggests that there might be better options available, smart businesses listen. I print all 3 letters on my best letterhead, sign them with my most confident signature, and drive to the post office to send them certified mail. Not because I'm trying to be dramatic, but because certified mail creates a paper trail. A record of exactly when these safety nets were removed and by whom. Sabrina calls while I'm standing in line at the post office. I let it go to voicemail. Then she calls again and again. By the time I get back to my car, I have 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails that I'm pretty sure consist mostly of various creative ways to call me vindictive. I listen to exactly one of them. You vindictive child. Her voice hisses through my phone speaker. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand that you're destroying everything we built together? Everything we built together. Interesting choice of words from someone who apparently built it all by herself and just needed me to stay out of the way. I delete the voicemail without listening to the others. For the first time in years, I have nothing to say to my wife. Turns out, silence really does feel like oxygen when you've been suffocating for this long. 2 days later, I wake up feeling like I've been sleeping for the first time in years instead of just lying in bed waiting for morning. There's something liberating about cutting ties. Like finally taking off shoes that have been pinching your feet so long you'd forgotten what comfortable felt like. I make my coffee, read the news, and decide it's time for the conversation that's been building toward this moment for months. I put on my charcoal suit, not the one I wore to firm events where I try to blend in, but the one I wear when I need people to remember that I belong in whatever room I'm walking into. It's a good suit, well-tailored, the kind that says, I may work in logistics, but I'm nobody's sidekick. I take my time with the tie, make sure my shoes are polished, and check myself in the mirror. Today, I'm not going to Holt and Barkley as Sabrina's husband. I'm going as myself. The lobby feels different when you're not worried about fitting in. Still all marble and glass and intimidating architecture, but now it just looks like an expensive office building instead of some temple where I'm not worthy to worship. I walk up to the security desk where Ozzy's working his morning shift. Hey, Mr. Pierce, he says with a genuine smile. Haven't seen you around in a while. Ozzy and I had talked once about his newborn daughter, how she was keeping him and his wife up all night, how expensive formula was getting, how amazing it was to watch this tiny person discover the world for the first time. The kind of conversation you have with someone when you actually see them as a human being instead of just part of the scenery. Hey Ozzy, how's little Sarah doing? Still keeping you guys up at night? Getting better, he grins. She's sleeping through the night about half the time now. My wife says I should appreciate it while it lasts because the terrible twos are coming. Smart woman. Listen, I need to get upstairs. Is conference room availability still handled through Mia? Yeah, she's at the main reception desk now. I'll call up and let her know you're coming. See, that's the thing about treating people like they matter. They remember you when it counts. Ozzy doesn't ask why I need a conference room or whether I have an appointment. He just makes the call because we're two guys who've had actual conversations about real life. Mia, Sabrina's assistant, looks nervous when I approach her desk. Not the kind of nervous you get when you're worried about someone, but the kind you get when you're caught between competing loyalties and you're not sure which side is going to win. Hi, Mr. Pierce, she says, glancing around like she's hoping someone will appear to handle this situation for her. How can I help you? I need a conference room for about an hour. Something with good natural light, if possible. She checks her computer screen, and I can see her weighing her options. Protocol probably says she should check with Sabrina before booking me a room. Common sense probably says that the husband of a named partner shouldn't need permission to use an empty conference room. Self-preservation probably says she doesn't want to be in the middle of whatever's happening between us. Glass 3 is available, she says finally. It has the best view of the city. Perfect. Can you ask Sabrina and Trent to meet me there in about 10 minutes? Tell them it's important. She nods and reaches for her phone. I head to Glass 3 to wait. Conference rooms at high-end law firms are designed to intimidate. Glass 3 is no exception. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A table that could seat 12, but somehow makes 2 people feel isolated. Chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The kind of room where million-dollar deals get made and careers get destroyed. I take a seat at the head of the table, spread out 3 manila folders in front of me, and wait. Not anxiously, not nervously, just wait. For the first time in our entire relationship, I'm the one setting the terms of the conversation. Sabrina and Trent arrive exactly 10 minutes later. Sabrina's wearing her armor, a black suit that probably costs more than my car payment, the kind of power outfit that's designed to remind everyone in the room who's in charge. Trent's got his game face on too, all-pressed shirt and intimidating presence. They sit across from me like we're negotiating a hostile takeover instead of having a conversation about marriage and business relationships. Which, when I think about it, maybe we are. Trent starts talking before they're even settled in their chairs. Whatever game you're playing with our vendors ends now, Rowan. This is business, not some personal vendetta. I slide the first folder across the table. You're absolutely right, Trent. This is business. This is the Document Management Services Agreement between Nexus Legal Systems and Holt and Barkley. Page 7, Section 12, Subsection C. Outstanding integration fees that have been under review for approximately 18 months. I slide the second folder. This is the sublease agreement for the 14th floor event space. Page 15, Clause 47. Conduct inconsistent with professional standards, with remedies including immediate surcharge and termination of booking privileges. The third folder lands in front of Sabrina. And this is the Master Services Agreement between myself and Kestrel Freight, with full discretionary authority over outside counsel selection. Signed, witnessed, and filed with their corporate office 3 years ago. Trent opens the first folder and starts reading. I can see his expression change as he processes what he's looking at. These aren't games or pranks or emotional outbursts. These are contracts. Legal documents with actual terms and real consequences. These aren't games. I continue, keeping my voice level and professional. They're contracts that you've benefited from for years while pretending I didn't exist. Business relationships that I built and maintained while being told I wasn't partner material. Sabrina's jaw flexes, that little tell she has when she's trying to control her temper. Why, Rowan? Why are you doing this? It's a good question. Maybe the only question that matters. Because you invited my introductions, my credit, my signature, my silence, just not me. Because for 5 years, I've been an investor in your success without any equity in your respect. Because you made it clear that I don't fit your image, and I've decided you're right. Trent looks up from the contracts. What do you want? I want what everyone wants in business, Trent. I want terms. Clear expectations. Mutual respect. I want to be treated like a partner instead of a problem. And if we don't agree to your terms? I lean back in my chair and look out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. All those people down there living their lives, making their deals, building their relationships on foundations of mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. Then you'll discover what it's like to run a law firm without the relationships that I brought to the table, without the financial backing that I provided, without the vendor agreements that I negotiated. You'll find out whether your success was really all about your legal brilliance, or whether some of it might have had to do with the logistics guy who wasn't partner material. The room gets very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when everyone suddenly understands exactly how much power has shifted and in which direction. Sabrina finally speaks, and her voice is softer than I've heard it in months. What do you want from me, Rowan? I want you to decide whether you want a husband or a silent investor. Because I'm done being both. You know what they say about throwing stones in glass houses? Well, turns out when you're dealing with a law firm that's basically one giant glass house, even the smallest pebbles can cause some pretty spectacular damage. By 5 o'clock that evening, the legal press had picked up the story, and by 6, my phone was buzzing like an angry hornet's nest. Anchor client leaves Holt and Barkley after partner gala, reads the headline in Legal Tribune. Not exactly Pulitzer Prize material, but you've got to love how fast news travels in the incestuous world of corporate law. Apparently, when a 40% revenue client suddenly redirects their business, people notice. Who would have thought? My phone starts ringing around 6:15. First call comes from some reporter at American Lawyer magazine who probably Googled Rowan Pierce and found my LinkedIn profile in about 30 seconds. Mr. Pierce, this is Jessica Chun from American Lawyer. I'm calling about the situation with Kestrel Freight and Holt and Barkley. Would you be willing to provide a comment on the circumstances surrounding your decision to redirect their legal services? I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then another. By 7 p.m., I've got reporters from Legal Week, the National Law Journal, and something called Corporate Counsel Today, all wanting to hear my side of the story. Here's the thing about being on the other side of a news story for the first time in your life. Everybody wants to make you the villain or the hero, and nobody's particularly interested in the truth, which is usually somewhere in the boring middle. They want drama, conflict, betrayal, revenge, basically a soap opera with billable hours. But I don't give them what they want. I don't give them anything. Celine, being the excellent attorney and better friend that she is, had prepared for this exact scenario. She issues exactly one statement, probably the most diplomatically worded "go screw yourselves" in the history of legal press releases. Our client wishes the firm well. He is merely aligning his business relationships with organizations that demonstrate mutual respect for all parties involved. That's it. No accusations, no drama, no juicy quotes about marital discord or professional slights. Just a polite way of saying that respect is a two-way street, and some people apparently need GPS to find it. But here's where things get interesting, because while I'm maintaining radio silence, other people aren't being quite so diplomatic. Inside Holt and Barkley, the partners are apparently having what you might generously call strategic discussions and what you might more accurately call a complete meltdown. I know this because Mia, sweet, nervous Mia who booked me that conference room, sends me a text around 8 p.m. Just wanted you to know that some of us remember all the times you helped out. This isn't right. 20 minutes later, Kara Winters, Sabrina's sharp-tongued ally and my personal candidate for most likely to make snide comments at a funeral, posts something on her Instagram story that she probably thinks is subtle but actually lands like a brick through a window. Some people can't handle when others succeed, she writes, over a picture of what looks like expensive wine in what's probably an expensive restaurant. Disgruntled spouses who try to sabotage their partner's career are the worst kind of toxic. Hashtag blessed, hashtag partnership, hashtag success. Now, Kara apparently forgot a few important things when she decided to take her passive-aggressive show public. First, she forgot that the internet never sleeps and has a very long memory. Second, she forgot that I've been part of this firm's ecosystem for 5 years, which means there are a lot of photos and emails and documents floating around that tell a very different story than the one she's trying to spin. Within 2 hours, someone, and I honestly have no idea who, but God bless them, starts posting receipts in the comments of her Instagram story. Photos from previous firm events where Sabrina is literally thanking me for making tonight possible. Screenshots of emails where I'm CC'd as the client liaison for major deals. Copies of invitations to firm celebrations that explicitly mention my contributions to successful closings. My personal favorite is a photo from about 18 months ago where Sabrina is presenting some client with a commemorative plaque, and I'm standing right next to her with a big smile, because I'd been the one who spent 3 days in a warehouse in Cleveland making sure their discovery materials got processed correctly. The caption on the original post, which someone helpfully screenshots, reads, "None of this would have been possible without my amazing husband's expertise and connections." Amazing husband's expertise and connections. Funny how that transforms into disgruntled spouse when the amazing husband finally gets tired of being treated like hired help. The internet being what it is, Kara's post gets ratioed into oblivion. People start commenting with fire emojis and "this you" responses, and within about 4 hours, she deletes the whole thing and makes her account private. But screenshots are forever, and the story has already grown legs. What started as anchor client leaves law firm becomes law firm partner's husband built their client base, then gets excluded from celebration. Then it becomes the man behind the success story speaks by not speaking. Then some blogger at Above the Law writes a piece called "When Your +1 Built Your Career But Isn't +1 Material" that gets shared about 1,000 times. The narrative doesn't become a scandal, exactly. It becomes something more dangerous for a firm that depends on reputation. It becomes symmetry. The story of someone who gave everything to build something and then got told they didn't belong in the thing they'd built. The kind of story that makes potential clients wonder what kind of people they're really doing business with. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in my living room, eating Chinese takeout and watching the whole thing unfold from a comfortable distance. My phone keeps buzzing with text messages. Some from reporters I ignore, some from old colleagues expressing support, and a few from people I barely know who apparently think this whole situation is hilarious. Around 10 p.m., I get a text from Maria Moreno at Moreno and Shaw. Ironvale and Northstar both called today. Very interested in discussing a transition. Also, you're officially the most popular man in legal gossip circles right now. How does it feel to be famous? I text back, like I'm finally getting credit for work I did years ago. The best part about the whole media circus is that I don't have to manage it, defend it, or explain it. The facts speak for themselves, and the facts are pretty simple. I built relationships, I got results, I supported success, and then I got told I wasn't good enough to celebrate that success. Sometimes the truth is the best revenge because it doesn't require any embellishment. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzes one more time. Sabrina, texting from what I assume is Damage Control Central. This has gone too far. We need to talk. I look at the message for about 30 seconds, then turn off my phone and go to bed. For the first time in months, I sleep like a baby. They say that consequences have a way of arriving in their own time, but apparently nobody told them that sometimes they show up early and bring friends. Over the next 2 weeks, I get to watch the domino effect of my little rebellion play out in real time, and I've got to admit, it's better than any premium cable drama series. The first domino falls exactly 48 hours after my glass conference room performance. Harbor Trust Bank, those lovely folks who've been enjoying my personal guarantee on Sabrina's partner loan for way longer than originally planned, sends a very formal letter to both of us explaining that they'll need to restructure the lending arrangement now that the original guarantor has withdrawn his support. Banking language is a beautiful thing when you know how to read between the lines. Restructure the lending arrangement translates roughly to, we still want our money, but now we're going to charge you a lot more for the privilege of borrowing it, because we no longer have your husband's excellent credit score to fall back on. Sabrina's new loan comes with an interest rate that's about 3 points higher than what she was paying when I was backing her play. Not enough to bankrupt her, but enough to make her monthly payments feel a lot less comfortable. Enough to make her think twice about those impromptu shopping trips to Nordstrom and those weekend spa retreats that used to appear on our joint credit card statements. The quarterly partner draws at Holt and Barclays start shrinking too, though that takes a little longer to manifest. See, when you lose 40% of your monthly revenue overnight, you can't just absorb that loss by cutting back on office supplies and cheaper coffee in the break room. You've got to make real adjustments to real budgets, which means real cuts to real paychecks. Kestrel Freight doesn't just redirect their business to Moreno and Shaw. They do it with the kind of efficiency that makes other clients pay attention. When a company that's been loyal to a firm for 3 years suddenly jumps ship, other companies start asking questions. Not hostile questions, just the kind of prudent business questions that smart executives ask when they see patterns they don't understand. Maria Moreno handles the transition like the consummate professional she is. No trash-talking Holt and Barclay, no dramatic announcements about superior service, just quiet competence and the kind of personal attention that reminds clients why they chose to work with someone in the first place. Ironvale Metals follows Kestrel's lead within a week. Their general counsel, a sharp woman named Janet Harrison, who's been in corporate law longer than I've been alive, calls me personally to discuss the transition. I want you to know, she tells me, that our decision isn't based on any dissatisfaction with the legal work Holt and Barclay provided. They're competent attorneys. But business relationships are built on trust and mutual respect, and when I see how they treated the person who brought us together, it makes me question their judgment in other areas. Janet's a straight shooter who doesn't waste words, so when she says she's questioning their judgment, what she means is that she's wondering what other important relationships they might be taking for granted. Smart executives don't like working with people who can't manage their own internal dynamics. Northstar Bio takes a little longer to make their move, but when they do, it's even more definitive. They don't just redirect their routine legal work. They pull their entire regulatory compliance contract, which represents about 15% of Holt and Barclays' total revenue. Their reasoning is elegantly simple. If the firm can't maintain professional relationships with the people who facilitate their business development, how can they be trusted to maintain the kind of long-term regulatory relationships that keep pharmaceutical companies out of FDA trouble? The document management system situation gets resolved, but not without some expensive lessons learned. Nexus Legal Systems flips the system back to full functionality after Holt, and Barclay pays not just the outstanding integration fees, but also a late payment penalty that probably costs more than most people's annual salary. Rafi Danish is nothing if not thorough about contract enforcement. Business is business, he tells me when I call to thank him for his professionalism throughout the whole mess. You pay your bills on time, you get full service. You don't pay your bills on time, you get exactly what you pay for. It's not personal, it's just math. The 14th floor event space situation is my personal favorite resolution. Pier 17 Holdings, my little LLC that apparently nobody at Holt and Barclay bothered to investigate when they started using the space, terminates their future event privileges for what the contract very specifically defines as reputational breach inconsistent with the professional standards expected of sublessee events. The termination comes with a surcharge that's exactly 3 times the standard event fee, plus a very polite explanation that future bookings will not be accepted from organizations that demonstrate conduct incompatible with the mutual respect and professional courtesy that this venue seeks to maintain. Lydia Chun, the building manager, handles the whole thing with the kind of bureaucratic precision that would make a Swiss-trained conductor weep with joy. No drama, no personal animosity, just a thorough application of contractual terms that nobody apparently thought would ever be enforced. The real beauty is that none of this feels like revenge. It just feels like business. The kind of business that happens when you treat contracts like they actually mean something, and when you stop pretending that personal relationships don't matter in professional settings. About 10 days into this new reality, I'm sitting in my kitchen, drinking my morning coffee and reading the business section of the newspaper like a normal human being when my phone rings. Sabrina's name pops up on the caller ID, and for the first time in weeks, I actually consider answering it. I let it go to voicemail, then listen to the message about 20 minutes later. Rowan. Her voice sounds tired in a way I haven't heard since her bar exam prep days. I know you're angry, and I know I screwed up, but this has gone beyond making a point. The firm is hemorrhaging money, the partners are panicking, and I'm spending more on loan payments than I'm bringing home. We can fix this if we just sit down and talk like adults. Please, call me back. I saved the message, but don't call back. Not yet. That evening, around 11 p.m., which, let's be honest, has always been Sabrina's preferred time for difficult conversations because she thinks I'm more pliable when I'm tired. She texts me from what I assume is her office, because she's apparently still there at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. We can fix this. Come home. Home. Interesting word choice. The condo that I bought and she redecorated? The place where I pay the mortgage and she decides what art goes on the walls. The space where I've been walking on eggshells for months, trying not to embarrass her with my provincial presence? I look around my current living situation, a furnished apartment in a decent neighborhood that doesn't require me to pretend to be someone I'm not. Clean lines, comfortable furniture, no trophies for achievements I wasn't allowed to celebrate. No stack of bills for other people's business expenses on the kitchen counter. No constant reminders of how much money I've spent supporting dreams that apparently don't include me. It's quiet here. Not the oppressive quiet of being ignored, but the peaceful quiet of not having to justify your existence every time you walk into a room. No, I type back. Just that one word, because sometimes the simplest answers are the most complete ones. For the first time in years, I sleep through the night without waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if I've done enough, given enough, sacrificed enough to earn my place in my own life. The answer, apparently, is that the question was wrong from the beginning. You don't earn your place in your own life. You just live it. And I'm finally ready to start living mine again. 2 days later, I get a call from David Shaw at Moreno & Shaw. They want to talk about bringing me on as a client relations partner, not a lawyer, but the guy who speaks fluent logistics and freight and can translate those languages into courtroom when necessary. We've been watching how you handle business relationships, David tells me, and we like what we see. You understand that trust is built through consistency, not just competence. You know that treating people with respect isn't just good manners, it's good business. We think you'd be a valuable addition to our team. For the first time in months, someone is offering me a position based on what I bring to the table, not asking me to minimize what I bring so someone else can look better. When can we start talking specifics? I ask. The conversation lasts about an hour, and by the end of it, I have a job offer that includes equity participation, input on business development strategy, and a title that actually reflects what I do instead of what I'm not. They value what I bring. They say my name in rooms and mean it. They understand that logistics guy isn't a limitation. It's a specialization that brings real value to legal services. Imagine that. 3 weeks after the gala where I learned I didn't fit the image, I'm sitting in a conference room at Moreno & Shaw, reviewing contracts for client relationships that I'm helping to build instead of relationships that I'm being excluded from. Maria Moreno looks across the table at me and smiles. Welcome to the team, partner. Partner, not in the legal sense. I'm not a lawyer and don't pretend to be one. But in the real sense, the sense that matters. Someone who contributes, who belongs, who gets credit for the work they do and respect for the value they bring. It's amazing how good that word sounds when someone means it. 6 months later, I'm standing by the river at 7 a.m., watching the sunrise paint the water gold while I catch my breath after a 3-mile run. There's something almost poetic about starting your day by moving forward under your own power, choosing your own pace, picking your own route. No meetings to accommodate, no schedules to work around, no need to make myself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. Turns out, when you stop spending all your energy managing other people's crises, you have enough left over to take care of yourself. Who would have thought? I've been living in my own space for 6 months now, not the furnished apartment where I crashed after the gala, but a real place that I chose and decorated and pay for without having to justify every purchase to someone who thinks my taste is too provincial for their image. It's a 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood that's more working professional than aspiring socialite, with a kitchen that's actually designed for cooking instead of looking good in architectural magazines. The second bedroom has become my home office, equipped with the kind of technology setup that would make a logistics nerd weep with joy. Multiple monitors, a printer that actually works when you need it to, and enough desk space to spread out contracts and shipping manifests and client files without having to clear space for someone else's legal briefs. This morning, like every morning for the past 4 months, I'm headed to the offices of Moreno and Shaw, where I hold the title of Senior Partner for Client Relations and Business Development. It's a mouthful of a title that basically means I'm the guy who speaks warehouse and freight dock and C-suite with equal fluency, translating business problems into legal solutions and legal solutions back in a business language that real people can understand. Maria Moreno and David Shaw turned out to be exactly what they seemed like during that initial conversation. Smart lawyers who understand that the best legal practice isn't just about knowing the law. It's about understanding the businesses and the people who need legal services. They built their firm on the radical concept that client relationships are partnerships, not transactions, and that the person who brings the client to the table deserves to stay at the table. Revolutionary thinking in the legal world, apparently. My office has a window that overlooks the city instead of a parking garage. My name is on the door in actual letters instead of being conspicuously absent from guest lists. When clients come for meetings, I'm introduced as Rowan Pierce, our senior partner for client relations, instead of Rowan. He's in logistics. Small differences that add up to the difference between belonging and being tolerated. Kestrel Freight has been thriving under Moreno and Shaw's representation. Marta Quintero, their general counsel, sent me a bottle of excellent whiskey last month with a note that said, "Thank you for reminding us that business relationships should be built on mutual respect. Best decision we've made in years." Iron Veil Metals brought us 3 new clients through referrals. Companies that were impressed by the seamless transition and the personalized attention that comes from working with a firm that treats every relationship like it matters. Janet Harrison has become something of an unofficial ambassador for our services, which is the kind of word-of-mouth marketing that money can't buy. Northstar Bio has been our biggest success story. Their regulatory compliance work has expanded into a comprehensive legal partnership that covers everything from FDA submissions to international shipping regulations. Last week, they signed a 5-year exclusive contract that represents more annual revenue than I used to make in 3 years at my old logistics job. The beautiful irony is that I'm doing essentially the same work I was doing before, building relationships, facilitating communication between different worlds, helping businesses solve problems, but now I'm getting credit for it instead of being told to stay in the background while someone else takes the spotlight. David Shaw knocked on my office door yesterday afternoon with a proposal that would have seemed like science fiction 6 months ago. "We're thinking about expanding," he said. "Opening a second office, maybe in Chicago or Atlanta. We want someone to head up business development for the new location. Interested in being trusted with major business decisions. In having my expertise valued instead of dismissed. In being offered opportunities instead of being told I don't fit the image. Yeah, you could say I'm interested." My phone buzzes while I'm reviewing contracts for a new client, a mid-sized manufacturing company that needs help navigating some complex environmental regulations. Text message from an unknown number, but I recognize the area code. It's the same one that Holt and Barclay uses for their main office line. "I'm sorry you felt excluded." Felt. That word sits there on my phone screen like a paper cut that won't heal. Not, I'm sorry I excluded you. Or, I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry you felt excluded. Like my perception of being systematically dismissed and diminished was just a misunderstanding, a failure of communication, an overreaction to perfectly reasonable professional boundaries. I stare at the message for about 30 seconds, then archive it without responding. Some conversations aren't worth having, especially when the other person is still trying to rewrite history instead of acknowledging it. The thing about feeling excluded is that it requires someone to actively do the excluding. Feelings don't exist in a vacuum. They're responses to actions, to patterns, to the accumulation of small moments that add up to big truths. When someone consistently treats you like you don't belong, eventually you feel like you don't belong. Funny how that works. But here's what I've learned over the past 6 months. The best revenge isn't grand gestures or dramatic confrontations or public humiliation. The best revenge is building a life where you don't need to be on anyone's list to belong. I delete the text and get back to work. Real work. Work that matters. Work that gets recognized and valued and compensated appropriately. Work that doesn't require me to make myself invisible so someone else can shine brighter. Maria stops by my office around lunchtime with updates on 3 potential new clients and a grin that tells me she's got good news to share. Remember that pharmaceutical logistics company that contacted us last month? They want to move forward with a comprehensive legal partnership. Regulatory compliance, shipping contracts, international trade law, the whole package. They specifically asked for you to be their primary point of contact. Why me specifically? Because, and I quote, Rowan Pierce is the only person we've met who understands both the legal side and the business side of what we do. He doesn't just give us legal advice. He gives us business solutions that happen to involve legal advice. Business solutions that happen to involve legal advice. I like that description a lot better than provincial or not partner material. That afternoon, I have lunch with Celine Park, my oldest friend, my attorney, and the person who saw this train wreck coming from about 5 miles away. We meet at a bistro downtown that specializes in the kind of food that tastes good instead of the kind that photographs well for social media. You look different, she says after we order. Lighter somehow. Like you've been carrying around a weight for so long you forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. I feel different. More like myself, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. You spent 5 years trying to be the kind of person who deserved to be included in someone else's vision of success. Now you're just being the kind of person who creates your own success. Celine's always been good at cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of things. It's what makes her an excellent attorney and an even better friend. Any regrets? She asks. I think about it for a minute, really think about it. Do I regret the 5 years of supporting Sabrina's career? The money I spent, the connections I made, the effort I put into building something that I thought we were building together? No. I say finally. I regret how it ended, but I don't regret what I did. I believed in someone I loved, and I acted on that belief. The fact that she didn't value what I brought to the table doesn't mean I was wrong to bring it. And now I'm working with people who do value what I bring to the table. It's amazing how much easier life gets when you stop trying to convince people to appreciate you and start working with people who already do. We spend the rest of lunch talking about her cases, my new clients, and the general absurdity of people who think that professional success gives them license to treat others poorly. It's the kind of conversation you can only have with someone who's known you long enough to remember who you were before you started doubting yourself. That evening, I'm back in my condo, cooking dinner for one, and actually enjoying the process instead of seeing it as a chore to get through before the next crisis demands my attention. I've got music playing, a glass of wine breathing on the counter, and a salmon fillet that's going to be perfectly prepared because I can take my time with it. My phone rings around 8 p.m. Sabrina's name pops up on the caller ID for the first time in about 2 months. I consider letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity gets the better of me. Hello, Sabrina. Rowan. Her voice sounds different, less commanding, more uncertain. How are you? I'm well. How are you? I'm managing. The firm is stabilizing. We've brought in some new clients to replace the ones we lost. Things are getting back to normal. Normal. Interesting word choice for a situation that involved losing nearly half their revenue and having to restructure multiple financial arrangements. I'm glad to hear it. There's a pause, the The kind of pause that happens when someone is trying to figure out how to say something they don't really want to say. I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to be treated like a partner instead of a problem. I think maybe I lost sight of how much you contributed. How much you still contribute. Contributed. Past tense. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Another pause. Longer this time. I miss you, she says finally. I miss us. I miss having someone who understands the business side of what I do. Someone who can translate between my world and the real world. Someone who can translate between my world and the real world. Not someone she loves, not someone she respects, not someone she wants to build a life with. Someone who can perform a useful function in her professional ecosystem. I understand. I tell her, and I mean it. But I'm not a translator, Sabrina. I'm not a bridge between your world and the real world. I live in the real world. And I've found people who value that instead of seeing it as something that needs to be managed or hidden or apologized for. We could try again. We could do it differently this time. We could, but I don't want to. The words come out easier than I expected, without anger or bitterness or the need to explain or justify. Just a simple statement of fact. I don't want to go back to being smaller than I am so someone else can feel bigger than they are. I hope you find what you're looking for, I tell her. I hope you build the kind of life that makes you happy. I just won't be part of it anymore. After I hang up, I finish cooking my dinner, pour myself another glass of wine, and sit down at my kitchen table with a book I've been meaning to read for months. Not a business book or a self-help guide or something designed to make me more useful to other people. Just a novel that looked interesting when I walked past the bookstore last week. It's good to have time to read novels again. It's good to have evenings that belong to me instead of to someone else's emergency. It's good to live in a space where I don't have to justify my presence or apologize for taking up room. I'm not angry anymore. Anger requires energy that I'd rather spend on building things than tearing them down. I'm not bitter, because bitterness is just disappointment that's been allowed to ferment, and I'm not disappointed anymore. I'm just free. Free to be exactly who I am, exactly where I am, exactly when I want to be there. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough.